Oh, hello everyone. Thanks for listening today. This video is going over what might make China be willing to accept North Koreans as refugees. All right, the primary factors that would influence China to accept North Koreans as refugees are internal, external political pressures, a major shift in its strategic relationship with North Korea, or a catastrophic event that changes the region's geopolitical landscape. Currently, China's official policy is to label North Koreans as illegal economic migrants and forcibly repatriate them in violation of its international obligations under the 1951 Refugee Convention. Reasons that could prompt a change in China's policy: a geopolitical shift in relations with North Korea, deteriorating diplomatic relations. China's relationship with North Korea has become strained at times, especially when North Korea conducts nuclear and missile tests. Beijing could use its refugee policy as a form of leverage if its relations with Pyongyang worsen significantly. A catastrophic event in North Korea. A large-scale collapse of the North Korean regime could cause a massive and uncontrollable flow of refugees, a scenario China fears due to potential instability on its border. In such a crisis, China would be unable to return the refugees and would be forced to accept them, likely seeking international aid to manage the influx. Increased international pressure, stronger international condemnation. Human rights organizations and foreign governments have repeatedly condemned China's repatriation policy, but more widespread and unified international pressure could push China to change its stance. Increased oversight. Allowing the United States Commissioner for Refugees unhindered access to North Koreans in China would increase international oversight that could pressure Beijing to halt repatriations. China has historically prevented such access. Resettlement assistance. International cooperation could help alleviate China's fears that it would be solely responsible for a large North Korean population. Offering alternative resettlement opportunities in countries like South Korea or the United States could encourage Beijing to legalize their status. Diplomatic consequences. Persistent violations of international law, including the principle of non-refoulement, not returning refugees to a place of danger, could lead to diplomatic and reputational costs for China. Domestic incentives, reduced exploitation and trafficking. By granting refugee status, China could reduce the number of North Koreans living in hiding and being exploited for cheap labor. The current undocumented status drives many, particularly women, into vulnerable situations like human trafficking and forced marriages. Better controlled population. Legalizing the status of North Korean refugees, particularly those who have married Chinese citizens, could give them access to basic services and enable authorities to better track and control the population, rather than have thousands of people living illegally under the radar. Current incentives for China to accept refugees. China's current policy is driven by strategic and domestic interests that outweigh the humanitarian considerations. Strategic buffer zone. Beijing views North Korea as a buffer state against the presence of U.S. troops in South Korea. Maintaining a stable, though dependent North Korea regime is a strategic priority. Fear of instability. A collapse of the North Korea regime and a subsequent refugee crisis could stabilize China's northeastern border region. Ideological alignment. China and North Korea are authoritarian, one-party states. Beijing's policy aligns with its own domestic surveillance and human rights policies and serves to reinforce the North Korea regime's control. Economic migration justification. By classifying North Koreans as illegal economic migrants, China can use its domestic immigration laws to justify forced repatriation and avoid its obligations under international refugee law. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. I know there's honking going on, so hopefully you got some of that. Well, take care, everyone. Thanks for listening.